So for this project, I'm going to be cutting up some clear glass for flower petals. And if you can't find the glass in the color that you want, you can just cut up clear glass and color it. So for this, I'm starting out with a beer mug. A beer mug has real thick glass, and I believe you can buy these beer mugs right up at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. And I'm going to go through this part of it really slow for those of you who do not know how to cut up flower petals. If you do, you can just fast forward through this part. So I'm just nipping around the perimeter of something that's circular, nipping a piece of glass off and cutting it in the shape of a petal. It's pointy at one end and rounded at the top. And yes, it does have a lot of jagged edges, but once you tumble it, spray it, and pour resin over it, you really don't even notice any of that. So again, here I have another piece. I have a pointy end and I'm rounding off the top end. And these are the C-Bell nippers that I'm using. The C-Bell nippers have the teal rubber rings behind the cutting wheels, and what that does is normally when you're using a nipper, the glass flies out the other end, and this actually holds on to the piece of glass, and then you just open the nipper and it falls out instead of flying across the room. So now don't let it fool you though, there are still some little shards that can fly out or crack off of the piece of glass, so it's really important that you wear safety glasses or eye protection while using it. I do not wear gloves because they drive me crazy. If you're worried about cutting yourself, it's probably in your best interest to wear gloves or some type of hand protection. Yes, every once in a while I do cut myself, but not every time. So here I am again, just nipping a smaller piece and kind of trying to make it look like a petal again, rounded at the top and pointy at the bottom. And for this I do use the beer mug, and I also use, you can see the other vase sitting down at the bottom, the bud vase. You can get these bud vases up at the Dollar Tree. They're clear and sometimes they're colored, and the colored ones are not the color all the way through, but you can still use them. And there's different ways to mask the clear edges on them, or you can just use them like that. A lot of people do. Other thing is thicker glass is easier to cut than thinner glass, like glass from a wine glass. Thinner glass can crumble and is more difficult to shape. The reason I'm using a cup instead of a flat plate is because we want it to be on a little bit of a curve, the petal, because petals are curved. At least most of them are. So the C-Bell nippers I got on Wits End Mosaics, which is based in the United States, and they're $59, and I think they were $10 shipping, and I was just on that site a second ago, and they're still the same price. And now I'm going fast forward. I think you guys get the picture. I dump it into my tumbler, put water over it, put a squirt of Dawn dishwashing liquid on it, and the Dawn dishwashing liquid just helps to clean the glass. It does not do anything to take the sharp edges off. You just need a tiny bit of it. And then I put it on my tumbler. This is the VEVOR tumbler that I keep inside the house all the time. I have other ones outside that I put grit in to actually make faux sea glass. This, I just put it in for an hour to take the sharp edges off. You can set it for up to 9 days and 4 different speeds, and you just push the button in to turn it on, and you do need to set a timer for yourself for 1 hour. Then I dump it out, rinse it off, and throw it on top of a towel to dry. Such a simple thing to do, and then the glass is no longer sharp and you can't cut yourself. After it was dry, I sprayed it with the Krylon Stained Glass Canary Yellow spray paint. The little flower to the side is sprayed with the Tamaya Yellow, and that's only 1 coat of paint. and the Krylon is actually 6 coats of paint. And the only reason I use that is I have a bunch left over that I had purchased before it got so expensive. The Tamiya you can actually get for like $7.50 a can with shipping, which brings it up to about $10, whereas the Krylon now they're price gouging and they want like $35 a can. So in this part of the video, I'm connecting the petals together with UV resin. You do not have to do this. You can just set it on your glass, but I'm actually going to be putting 2 layers on, and that's why I am choosing to do it this way. And I'm kind of wanting them to stand up arched, and this helps to do that. The other thing you can do is nip the pointed end off, and that will help them stand up. So anyway, as I'm doing this, for some reason the camera is moving further and further away and you can't really see what I'm doing at the end. But in this next clip you'll see me putting some other flowers together. So here, so that's one flower completed. I have to put something in the very center of it, but that's one completed. And then I'm starting kind of a side view of a flower I'm trying to create, and I'm just putting it together. I'm using the UV resin. If you haven't worked with UV resin, it's really easy to work with, and you can actually add pieces to your completed resin project after it's done by just putting a dot of that on and putting the UV light over it. This Let's resin lamp is wonderful. It's large. It comes with a bottom part also and a sliding tray, so you can actually set your UV resin with a light from the bottom and the top also. So it's really nice. I use this all the time. It's super easy, and it can even be set on its side if you need. And so here I am making the second layer of the flower just by putting the petals on top. And again, you could be doing this right on your glass on glass project, but to balance all of those petals, it would really be very frustrating, very tedious. So, and when I'm setting up this project, I kind of like to move the flowers around to see where I like where they look best. And if you have them just balanced on top of each other and try to move them even an inch, they're all going to fall off. So I would think it would be just very tedious doing it that way. So I've been really putting my flowers, the top of my flowers together now before I even put them on my project. And to me, this is so much easier. And then you can move it around in any position you want and change it. So I'm going to end up using 3 of these flowers, and I do need to put something in the center of each of them. And then these little petals here I'm going to be using for buds, to have a couple buds on my project. So for the leaves, I used this old vase, and I went around the top part of the perimeter and just took all of that off. Not the textured part, but the smooth part of it. And cut that off and set the other aside, and then took these pieces and cut them individually into leaves. And I don't know how, if you want me to go slow on this, but you can pretty much nip them any way that you want. There was kind of a lip on it that stuck out, and I tried to take that off because I didn't want that part. But I just kind of created some long shapes that I thought looked like a leaf. And honestly, you can nip them any way that you want, as long as you think they look like a leaf for the flower that you're creating. So what I like about the Seabell nippers, besides the fact that the teal ring grabs onto the piece of glass and it doesn't fly, is that they are more lightweight and they're easier on your hands. So if you have arthritis in your hands, or you nip glass all the time and your hands hurt, it is easier to pull them together or to nip the glass. I threw these in the VEVOR tumbler, and I could have tumbled these with the clear glass. I just had totally forgotten about doing leaves. So I threw these in, I covered them with water, I put in a squirt of the Dawn dish soap, which only cleans the glass. It does not do anything to take the sharp edges off. Threw it on the tumbler for an hour, dumped it out in the colander, rinsed it off, and dried it on a towel. So I had an old oval frame that was gold. I took all of the clips out of it and I flipped it over and I painted it with satin American accents. It's a blue spray paint. I think that's so pretty. It's actually a paint and primer, so it covers really well. Once it was dry, I flipped it over and I took Elmer's glue, this is the regular Elmer's glue, and put it around the perimeter of the back of the frame where the glass would sit. Then I replaced the glass and I took Elmer's glue one more time and went around the perimeter. Now, I've always done it this way, or most of the time I've done it this way, and recently I was trying to just do it with tape, but I was getting so many leaks that I decided it was in my best interest to glue it first, let it dry completely, and then put the painter's tape over the top of that. So this serves two purposes. It helps to hold the glass in place and it helps to prevent resin leaks. Putting resin on your project, the resin, once dry, will permanently adhere the glass to the frame. And next I took the painter's tape and put it around the perimeter of the back of the frame. And again, this is just an extra precaution against resin leaks. And I found, again, it was in my best interest to use the glue and the tape. So next I get out the flowers and the UV resin. And I put UV resin in the center of the flower, and then up in the very top you see some blue crushed glass. That's actually Ashland decorative filler that I've spray painted with the blue translucent Tamiya spray paint. And isn't that pretty? And can you imagine setting up your project and then trying to sprinkle that glass on top of there after? And it going all over the place. So that's why I'm choosing to use the UV resin. Now you could also put that on with glue. And then here I'm trying to build up the top of the flower, or it would be the center on this half flower that I have here. And I'm kind of making a half semicircle with the UV resin and then sprinkling the glass on top of it, and then see how I'm shaping it, and then I put the light on top. So that's how I create that. And I just think it would be really hard to do on top of the project while you're and trying to get everything else to hold still. And then while the UV light's on that, I'm trying to create the buds that I want to put on the project. And see how that turned out. And I'm going to build it up a little bit more and put just a little more of the blue glass on there. You have to kind of try to do it slow because you want to make sure that the UV resin is touching all of the glass. Here I'm just finishing up the 3 flowers and also attaching the 3 petals to a green piece of glass to make it look like a bud, and using the UV light. And this is what they look like when they're done. I think those turned out so pretty, and they're all attached, so you can move them all over on your project where you decide, where you want to place them. Then I'm ready for the project. The stained glass stems that you see there is stained glass that I've cut up on my own with the stained glass tool. I am not a stained glass expert by any means, but I can cut simple shapes, and I learned to do this on YouTube. There are probably hundreds of different channels that you can learn to cut stained glass for free. It really isn't that difficult. Throw the stained glass strips into my 35-pound MJR tumbler and tumble them with some grit. At the time I was tumbling them for a couple days, and I've now learned that you only have to tumble it for an hour or so. Yes, some of them do break, but the majority of them did stay intact. They are no longer sharp. Didn't they turn out nice? I started putting the project together, putting all the flowers and the stems on. The glass that I'm using for the bottom is actually a green, silver reflective glass that I had picked up on Amazon. I think it was a 10-pound container of it. Around Christmas time I used it for Christmas trees, and I haven't used it for anything since, so I put that down at the bottom. and then I put the leaves on, and then I put some little white flowers, and I've used these before. This is actually 1/4 inch celestial fire glass mixed with Artist Loft iridescent medium in a bowl, just mixed really well, and then spread out on a non-stick paper like parchment paper. And it's really important that you move it as far away from each piece as you can. Spread it out really well because it will stick to each other. Let it dry overnight, and then the next morning crumble it up between your hands and break apart any pieces that have stuck together, and it really turns out beautiful. Finish putting the little white flowers on, and I do have a little gold bead that I put in the center of them, and the long stems are made from vitrograph glass. So the resin I'm using for this project is Let's Resin resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio resin that you mix like most other resins slowly in a cup for 3 minutes, scraping the sides and scraping the bottom to ensure thorough mixing. So I start by just drizzling it over the flowers, and then because I have the flowers all in one piece, I pick them up and make sure that the resin is evenly distributed underneath them. That's what's so great about having the flowers already put together. You can move them around, pick them up, do anything you want with them without the fear of them, tumbling and having to put them back up again. I think when you're layering glass like that, I think it's easiest to just put them together, beforehand, and I'm really glad I did. But anyway, so the resin, I really like all the glass totally covered with resin, except for the green glass at the very bottom. I just drizzle it because the fire glass is real sparkly, and if you totally flood that, it will take away the sparkly quality. So like when you're doing Christmas trees and that, and you use that kind of glass, you're better off just drizzling it over it and not totally flooding it. But I do like to totally flood these other larger pieces of glass because I think they look pretty when they're totally covered with the resin. I use a toothpick to straighten all the flowers out, and I find a toothpick real convenient and real cheap to use, and you can even reuse them. And I use that to pull any hairs or any sediment that I might see in the project also. I also use the kitchen torch to get rid of bubbles, and sometimes the bubbles will kind of congregate around the frame there, so you have to kind of move them away. And this is a brooch that I had picked up on Temu. It's a dragonfly, and I removed the pin on the back so that it would lay flat. And I did not pour any resin over the top of the brooch though, because sometimes that'll take the iridescent qualities away when you put resin over an expensive jewelry, or any jewelry for that matter. So the only thing that I found that works with the resin on top of it are those rhinestone chains. It does not take away their sparkly qualities, or if they're iridescent, their iridescent qualities. Once I finish the project, I come back every 15 minutes to check for sediment, to check to see if I need to retorch for bubbles. I make sure none of the glass is moved. That's why it's really important that you have a very level table, and it is setting on my Let's Resin leveling table, which is wonderful because none of my tables are level. And then I was pretty much done with the project. Hey everyone, I put the paper behind it so you could see it better, because the way this lighting is, for some reason it's kind of washing it out. But anyway, I think it turned out pretty. Wouldn't say it was a easy project. There was a lot of cutting and coloring and stuff like that, but it was fun to do. I think it turned out cute. The flowers are with the Krylon stained glass spray paint, which of course is really hard to get now. I just happened to have a bunch of them left over from when it was not costing quite as much. And the Tamaya spray paint I think is real pretty. Some people think it's a brighter yellow and they don't like it as much, but I am experimenting with some other spray paints, and I'm going to be putting out a video next month about that. Different ones that you can use, the translucent, because I really like the translucent. Now you don't have to use translucent, But when you're doing it on glass, I think it really looks pretty like that. And trying to think, so the glass at the bottom is a fire glass that I purchased on Amazon, and I want to show it to you. I have it in a Celestial fire glass container just because when I buy Celestial fire glass, I keep these containers because they're nice. A lot of the stuff that you get, fire glass you get on Amazon comes in a bag. When it's in a bag, it's usually real dusty and you have to at least rinse it. Whereas the Celestial fire glass, you never have to, but this was in a bag. But I bought this at Christmas. Look at how pretty that is to make Christmas trees with. And it's that real pretty, I think it's a beautiful green, and it has the reflective mirror on one side. I thought that was so pretty. And then I had colored some glass with that Indian ink, Bombay Indian ink on my last video, and they have a color called grass green that I think is so pretty. And so I used mainly the glass in the big container for that, but then I also sprinkled some of the other at the bottom just to give it a little variation. And I did put those gold beads down at the bottom if you can see them. And anyway, so I'm trying to think what else I can tell you. Oh, so I went back to I was trying like for five of my projects, especially over Easter, I was trying to just seal up the back of the frame with tape, and 3 of the 5 leaked. So I decided it was in my best interest to go back to the glue, the Elmer's glue and the tape. It's just that you have to wait till the next day for the glue to dry before you put the tape on, so it can be kind of a pain, but I guess I'm not very patient. But there are other ways to seal up the backs. Different people do it in different ways. I've even heard of them using UV resin, which would be a pretty instant curing process. And if you've never worked with UV resin before, it is really easy to do. And UV resin is used just for small projects, not like you would never pour UV resin over this entire project. It's just for small projects. But, and you know, there's no mixing involved or anything like that. That's why it's so neat. It's like an instant glue. So I really enjoy working with the UV resin. And I'm trying to think what else I can tell you. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the project. If you did, the other thing I wanted to say was tumbling glass. I just think it's so cool that we can just throw the glass in a tumbler for 1 hour and it takes the sharp edges off. You know, before I used to think you had to do it for 2 or 3 whole days just to get the sharp edges off, but you don't have to. And even if for some reason you forget about it and you leave it in and it gets a little frosted, you can still paint it. Or if it doesn't need to be painted, when you put resin over it, it will take the frosted look away and make it look just shiny like it was never frosted. So that's just a tip for you. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps the channel. If you enjoyed the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the bell and it will notify you every time I come out with a video. I try to come out with a video every Friday. The Facebook page, a great group of people displaying beautiful artwork, very, very helpful. No question is too silly to ask. Somebody will answer you. Many times, many people will answer you. Come join us there. And I hope you guys all have a great day. Thanks for watching.